Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for Between a Breadwinner and a Caregiver, the Sandwich Generation Struggle Unwrapped. I'm Greg Berry, Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Since we are in a virtual setting, please excuse technical issues that may pop up. If you have problems with your video or audio, click the reconnect button on your screen to get back to the webinar right away. Just a heads up, the webinar is being recorded. A replay will be uploaded onto our website this afternoon. Live attendees will receive an email after that link is ready. Also, have a question for today's guests. Go ahead and drop it in the chat. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kimberly Kopic, Senior Director of Development for Planned Giving. Kimberly, welcome back.
Thanks, Greg. It's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce our speaker, Mary Meadows Livingston. Mary Meadows has a BA in psychology and a master's of teaching that she received from the University of Virginia. She spent the first 5 years of her career as an early childhood special educator at the Bell Center. During her time there, she realized the importance of financial wellness on more than just a bank balance, and that caused her to pivot her career into finance. She went to work at Porter White & Company, an investment banking and management firm. She is a certified financial planner and a CFA charter holder. She founded Abeona in 2020 with the goal of providing approachable financial advice that's research-based and rooted in each client's best interest. Mary Meadows, we're so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I think this topic is a really important one. Waiting for the slides to come up. There they are. That's impacting many of us in our prime working years as we're raising children, and then our parents. The boomer generation ages and retires. So this is a pretty weighty and broad topic, and my goal here today is to give you enough to think about to help you identify where your blind spots might be or a good place to do further research or take a next step. So I'm planning to talk for 30 to 40 minutes and then have time for questions at the end. So don't be shy on that. So let's jump into it. So first, who is the sandwich generation? What am I talking about here? So this is someone who is spending at least 20 hours a week caring for aging family members and also caring for children. These are typically folks in their 40s and 50s, primarily women, and likely to be in the prime of your career. I'm going to mention women a lot in this presentation because women are the primary group experiencing this squeeze, and the financial implications can have more of a negative impact. But I know there are certainly men in these situations that deal with it too, and just wanted to point that out. So why are we talking about this? I think most of you can agree that it can be hard to juggle multiple roles: parenting and raising children, working, growing your career, being a present spouse, not to mention just, getting the oil changed and doing the regular tasks of life. And then, to add on caring for an aging parent or coordinating care, it can be definitely draining financially, mentally, and emotionally. Being caught between the generations can be one of the most significant life transition challenges. If you're caring for everybody else, there's less time for vacation, sleep, exercise, time with family and friends, time alone, all of which, all those things have positive health outcomes, and you have less time to do it. And even when women are the breadwinner of the household, they still carry about 80% of the household duties. So that's important to remember. If it feels heavy, the research shows that it is. So, and then research has shown that women in this stage tend to lose an average of $324,000 in lifetime earnings at Social Security because of taking time off for caregiving. In this presentation, I won't delve into the gender wealth gap or investing gap or pay gap, but know that women are often behind the curve already compared to men financially, and then caregiving responsibilities can amplify that. So where do we begin? You probably will see this photo and know what I might be about to say. Put your own oxygen mask on before helping someone else. The same can be true for finances. You need to make sure that your financial situation is healthy and that you know your numbers before digging into care for someone else. I think a lot of times we can focus on taking care of everybody else before taking care of ourselves. So in this first section, I'm going to walk through some principles of good financial health. So this first set of slides is what I call the 5 derailers of financial success, adapted from my friend's book, Corner Office Choices. So the first derailer is a lack of goal clarity. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So what do you want your life to look like? Not understanding your cash flow, not knowing how much is coming in or going out every month, not having a comprehensive and goal-oriented financial plan, the lack of a strategic career plan, and taking too little investment risk when you can. So I'm going to delve into these a little bit more in the next slides. So, when it comes to making financial decisions, sometimes the decision that you need to make is very clear, black and white, but it's often gray. And especially when there's competing interests for your funds, raising kids, sports, college, and then saving for retirement, maybe, needing to help out a parent financially or an aunt or an uncle. So being connected to your guiding values and back again, to that goal-based plan. If an answer is not clear, go back and look at, what aligns with your values in terms of where to funnel your resources. Then, you need to know your numbers. And it probably sounds simple, but this is one thing I see over and over. You need to know numbers like what your income is, your income after tax, your net worth, and possibly most importantly, your cash flow. The second derailer is not understanding your cash flow, and that is more of a question of what does your lifestyle cost? How much do you spend each month? And unless you're going into debt, it's less about budgeting than it is about the primary input for all other financial decisions. How much do you need to save for retirement? How much do you need to keep in cash? How much life insurance do you need? What investment risk do you need to take or can take? All of that kind of goes back to what is your lifestyle cost. And if you don't know that, now is the time to start. There's several good budgeting apps out there that will give you transparency into your spending. And then, keeping track of your net worth is another indicator, knowing what you own and what you owe. And this should be growing over time. So on the slide, you'll probably recognize several things that sound familiar in terms of assets and liabilities. So assets are your savings and investment, real estate, your house. Liabilities can be mortgages, student loans, credit cards. But there's two sort of nebulous pieces on here. One of your biggest assets early and mid-career is your future earnings. So how are you maximizing and protecting that? And then on the liability side, even though you might not see it on a balance sheet or a statement, living above your means is a liability. So those are something to remember. And then the other question I get asked a lot is how much cash should I have and what do I do with extra cash? Kind of like which buckets need to be funded and with how much. So this slide talks about what to do with your next dollar, and it's a framework for thinking about what to do with your cash. So the first bucket, and you can think of this as a waterfall. So you would want to fill up the top bucket, and once that's full, it would spill down to the next bucket. So the first bucket you want to fill up is make sure you have enough cash for an emergency fund. And that, goes back to how much does your lifestyle cost? So what is, 3 to 6 months of expenses. Then you want to make sure you're taking advantage of your 401k or 403b, especially if you're at UAB. Make sure you're getting that match. Then if you have high interest credit card debt, use extra cash to attack that. And beyond that, look at maxing out your 401k or 403b. It's $23,000 a year this year. And beyond that, you can look at other tax deferred vehicles like a Roth IRA or a backdoor Roth. And you would look at extra debt payments like on your mortgage, after that. And then, if you have kids, we'll talk a little bit about college funding in a little bit, but that, college savings could fit in after some of the retirement savings. The fourth derailer is the lack of a strategic career plan. So you can budget all day long and cut costs and cut expenses, but the real change in growing wealth happens when you grow your income. There will be more money to save and invest, and more money to invest further down that waterfall I showed you. If you change jobs or get a new role, your new salary is based on a bump up from a higher number. When your work 401k match and profit sharing amounts or pensions are calculated, they're calculated on a higher income base, which results in higher amounts going into savings and investments. So we can't control everything about our job and our income, but you can work to educate yourself to get higher pay, or maybe you can negotiate your salary or your benefits. And understand the different types of compensation that might be available for you. So if you're comparing two different jobs, make sure you understand the total compensation and the totality of the benefits and not just salary. And I don't have a whole lot of time to get into investing today. That's a whole other webinar. But not taking enough investment risk when you can to grow your money for the long term is the last derailer. So what can you do to educate yourself about investing and gain experience? On the flip side, if you're retired or almost retired, if you have a year or two left till you plan to retire, you don't want to take too much investment risk. But this chart from Fidelity shows the confidence gap that contributes to the investing and the wealth gap. And part of becoming confident comes with experience. So I don't know if this resonates with any women on the call, but it's certainly a trend in the data that women feel pretty confident being the CFO of the household, managing day-to-day finances, managing the cash, deciding about a large purchase, but they're less confident when it comes to long-term planning and investments. And sometimes that keeps us from engaging in it and keeps us on the sidelines. So, less than a third feel confident investing for, short or medium term goals or understanding what they need in retirement. This is pretty individualized. Sometimes folks ask, what should my number be? And this is where a professional might be able to help. Now, since we are talking about individuals who are raising both kids and caring for parents, I want to touch on college planning. And if you have kids, I'm sure you're aware that college costs have been rising steadily. And while it might be hard to set aside enough funds to cover all 4 years, if that's your goal, it's important to have a plan and it's important to do something. This is all situation dependent, but if parents are able to, I often encourage them to, have conversations about what you would like to provide and what you're able to provide, and try to save for about half of that, and then try to cash flow the rest when the time comes. So how the heck do you pay for college when it gets here? There are different options you can think about in terms of funding, and they kind of fall in 3 buckets. So the first bucket is aid and scholarships. So financial aid would be Pell Grants that are income dependent, work study programs, and need-based scholarships. There's also merit aid and scholarships for that. On the debt side, you can look at subsidized or unsubsidized federal student loans, and the subsidized loans subsidize a portion of the interest. There are Parent Plus loans that parents can take out for their child's education. There are private loans. And then, if you have equity in your home, you could tap into some of that with a home equity line of credit. On the asset side, you can have cash savings, a 529 account, or a UTMA account, which I'll get to in just a minute. I don't know if anybody paid attention the last, I guess it's probably been a month, but there have been changes to the FAFSA, which is the form you fill out to get to understand what you're eligible for in terms of financial aid. And there have been some changes coming down the pipeline. And here is a summary of some of the most impactful changes. This was in the news probably a month ago because they rolled out this new form with fewer questions, but the implementation was kind of bungled. And so I imagine this happened. It was a buzz on the other side of UAB's campus. So they used to give you credit for having multiple kids in college at the same time, and they removed that. So, that's not a help there. Assets owned by grandparents were included if it was like a 529 account that's owned by a grandparent, and now they're not included. So that could be a strategy. Divorced parents, so the expected family contribution, you used to be able to pick the parent with the lower income, but it automatically goes to the parent with the higher income now. And then step parent income. So if parents are remarried, that income is now included. So it makes it, I would say, for most families, makes it a little bit harder to qualify for aid. So as far as savings options for college, there are generally 3 routes. A 529 plan is a state-sponsored plan. It covers, it's kind of like a retirement account for education in that the money you put in grows tax-free and as long as you take it out for qualified education expenses. The parent owns this asset, and you can contribute up to the annual gift exclusion limit annually. So you can put a good chunk away. Alabama actually has a good low-cost plan that you can leverage to save, and you do get a state tax deduction of up to $10,000 for money you put in. Some people worry that if they save in a 529, you'll have more in there than you need, or what if the child gets a scholarship, you won't be able to pull that out. But for the most part, I would say most people are going to use everything they save. And then the next option is a UTMA account, and that is a Uniform Transfers to Minor account. It's a custodial account that is in the child's name with a parent as custodian. And there's no tax benefits, but it's the most flexible. So you could use it for anything. The other issue here is that it is child owned at the age of majority. So as long as they know about it, when they turn 19, they could take it over as their own and cash it out and quit college and do what they want with it. So that's something to know there. And then there's a Coverdell education savings account that it has a smaller contribution limit of $2,000 a year, but has similar, tax-free growth functions as a 529. So these are your options. I would say a 529 is the most helpful, and you can Google College Counts 529, and that's the Alabama plan. But each state has their own and may or may not give a tax deduction. So here are the do's and don'ts when it comes to paying for college. So do start saving and investing early. Definitely talk to your child about costs and implications of student debt if they go that route. Utilize a 529 and consider all alternatives. So, try not to encourage your child to not be laser focused on which school that they want to go to, and consider different options with different financial implications. And then don't think that you will get a lot of financial aid. Don't sacrifice your financial health to pay for college, and don't blindly take out loans without understanding the consequences. So now that we have raised, oh, I've got one more. Y'all may remember this movie from the early 2000s where Matthew McConaughey lives at home as a 35-year-old, and why would he not? He gets his laundry done. He doesn't pay rent. He can spend what he makes on whatever he wants and going on trips. So you definitely don't want to do this with your child. You know, for the sake of your child's future spouse, you need to teach them a little responsibility. But, you know, in the era of crushing student loans, it can be nice to help kids get on their feet, but with some boundaries. You know, you can use this time to teach them how to be financially responsible, budgeting, investing, leveraging benefits at work. Be clear about how you might financially support them and how you will not. Make sure you're talking to sons and daughters about the same thing. There's research that shows that parents are more likely to talk to sons about taking risk and investing, and talk to daughters about you know, bank accounts and budgeting and cash flow. You know, do you need to make them pay rent? What are they responsible for at home? Cooking a meal every week. One cool thing you can do to help them out, I think, if you're able, is to match their savings in a savings account or contribution to a Roth IRA when they're just starting out. You can do that, you know, when they're in high school, if they have a job. You know, if they're paying rent while living at home, that can go into their rent money, could go really just be into a savings account. And I've got a book, I've got some books at the end that are resources that can help with that. So, you know, now let's jump into raising our parents. So on the other side of the coin is that people are starting to need to help out parents as they age. And I'm going to walk through some important conversations that you need to have. And then I'll also explain long-term care costs and long-term care insurance, which is often misunderstood and what I get questions about. So these are my parents, Bill and Mary Jane. They are divorced from each other and they're happily remarried. And I like to use them as an example of two ends of the extremes of planning ahead and how some of these conversations might go. Both of my parents are thankfully healthy and happy, and they are in their mid-70s. So this is my dad, Bill, on the left side with his grandchildren, and he does not enjoy having uncomfortable conversations. I vaguely know his financial situation, and I know who manages his investments, but I've not been successful in getting him to get a will or a power of attorney drafted. He has a handwritten will on a piece of paper that he wrote and signed and thinks that will suffice. Also, he's on a second marriage, as is my mother, and there are estate planning complications that may or may not have been addressed. You know, who knows? So, you know, working, you know, trying to get a handle on what he wants in his situation has been a little bit more difficult. Then we go over to my mom, Mary Jane, and she has basically, you know, been a poster child of what to do. She added me to her bank account. She shared her will and power of attorney with me. She's purchased long-term care insurance. She told me where her assets are and who to contact. So in that sense, you know, definitely the poster child. But not only did she check those, you know, helpful items off her list, but she's also written her obituary, planned her funeral, and picked out her music, which, you know, really went the extra mile. But hopefully that is something we won't need to look at for a long time. So one of the most important things to remember is to start having these conversations early and before you need to. It's often not a fun conversation to think about death or the loss of mental faculties, but it's easier to address when you're not in a crisis. The first thing to talk about is whether or not your parents have an estate plan and how recently these plans were updated. And this goes for you too. I didn't mention it when you were, I was talking about getting your own financial life in order, but you also need these documents. So do they have the documents first? And then when were they last updated? Have circumstances changed since then, like divorce or death? Has the law changed since then? I believe there was a change in Alabama state law that impacts powers of attorney back in 2012. Are the personal representatives still the best for the job? Are they still around? Are they, still who you would trust? Does the power of attorney include elder care language? There's certain language that allows you, if you're the power of attorney, to make certain decisions about assets and Medicaid and care. That's important. And then, are beneficiaries up to date on retirement accounts and life insurance? So if somebody has gone through the process recently to update wills, but they did not change the beneficiary designations on retirement accounts and life insurance, the designation overrides what's in the will. So, if somebody gets divorced and they leave their first spouse on as a beneficiary, wife number 2 will not be happy when that day comes around. So you want to make sure that that's been done. And then talk about, what general wishes do they have? What do they envision their life looking like when they need more help? Do they want to stay in their home long term? And is that feasible? Is there a bedroom on the ground floor? Are there a lot of steps? Or is that a place that they can age easily in? If they need additional help, what do they hope for? Do they want to stay at home? Do they want to live with family? Do they have thoughts on living in a facility or maybe going to assisted living? And facilities aren't always the worst choice. Dementia care can be necessary from a safety standpoint, and especially for single people. The community and activities in a facility can be beneficial. In-home care, and I'll get a little bit more into this, is by far the most expensive option. And if somebody needs 24-hour care, that can easily cost $120,000 a year or more. So having these conversations about what you would like to happen and then, what's feasible are important. Do they have an advanced health care directive? And this is a document as part of the estate planning process that gives information about your medical wishes if you can't communicate those. Like, would you want to be on a feeding tube, put on a ventilator, something like that. And then, financial discussions sometimes can be easy or sometimes they can be fraught. Some people feel comfortable sharing information and some people do not. But there are some kind of low-level conversations you can have to at least get some information. And you would, ideally like to understand how secure is their financial situation in retirement. What are the potential needs? Because this could ultimately impact your own financial plan if theirs is not stable. You want to know, at the least, if you can't have any in-depth conversations, where are the assets? So where are accounts held? And then who are primary contacts? Who's the investment manager? Who's the financial planner? Who's the insurance agent, the banker, the attorney? Are there safe deposit boxes, and where are those, and who are on the who's on the signature card? And then, if you're able to monitor, credit reports and accounts for fraud, that's rampant. I was talking to a woman at United Way earlier who works on elder abuse and fraud, and she said the number one thing you can do to help protect your family member is tell them not to answer the phone from people who they don't have in their phone. So again, at the least you would want to know what where assets are located and who to contact. So I want to get into the realities about long-term care and the costs. Care can be done in a facility or at home and can be paid or done by paid or unpaid caregivers. And the unpaid caregivers are often family members. So here are a few statistics. So for someone who is 65 years old today, in that age group, 64% of single men and 75% of single women will need long-term care help for 90 days or more. For couples, there is only a 9% chance that neither will need care for 90 days or more. So it's likely that one or both will need it. The real, risk is that you will have a longer term need for care. So that would be 4 years or longer. The average need is, somewhere between 2 and 3 years, with women often needing it a little bit longer. So if somebody needs care for 4 years or longer, that's the highest cost outcome. And 32% of women and 20% of men will need that. It's important to know that Medicare does not pay for long-term care expenses. Medicaid, which is indigent care, will pay for skilled nursing in certain facilities, but it's after you've exhausted some of your or the majority of your assets. So that's a little bit about what it can cost. So it's hard to conceptualize what it makes sense to buy insurance for. So I put together this grid, and you can consider this grid in terms of the likelihood of an event and the cost of an event. So on the left-hand side is a low-cost event, and generally you would self-insure for those. So something that's either a high or low likelihood, but a low cost, it's not going to wreck your plan. For something that is highly likely to happen and also has a high cost, that's where you would need to weigh the cost of self-insuring or transferring risk to an insurance company. And you can think about this in terms of having a beach house on the Gulf right now. The risk of the likelihood of a hurricane hitting and damaging your house has gotten higher, and the cost is going to be high. So insurance companies are, doubling insurance premiums, so those are very expensive. And then in some cases, are choosing not to insure that area any longer. So what it definitely makes sense, if you can, to transfer risk for is something that has a low likelihood but a high cost. So that's where an insurance company can pool together risk and pay out a claim if something happens. It's unlikely to happen, but if it does, it can wreck your financial plan. So the cost of insurance is a little bit lower since it's a low likelihood. So what does that look like in terms of long-term care insurance? So there's a high likelihood but a low cost that your parent or you might need help with groceries or housekeeping, or maybe have a driver. So that would be, it's pretty likely that an aging person would need help with some of that, but the cost is low. Then if you look at higher cost options, looking back to the statistics, it's pretty likely that a good number of folks will need long-term care, and the average cost of that might be $200,000 to $300,000. So it's certainly a high cost and a high likelihood, but for a lot of folks, that may not wreck the bank. What is the bigger risk is that 4-year plus stay or need for long-term care. So staying in skilled nursing or dementia care, or needing 24-hour care for a long term. So that's the piece that might make sense to transfer to an insurance company. And there are different types of long-term care insurance. So the traditional policy, long-term care insurance policy, is kind of like home insurance. You pay premiums, you receive a benefit under certain terms if you qualify. The premiums can rise. You've probably heard about that if you've read anything about it. And then it's sort of a use it or lose it. If you never need care and you pay those premiums for 20 years, there's no, refund. Then the second option, which is my favorite, is an asset-based or hybrid policy. So this is combined. It's a long-term care policy combined with an annuity or a whole life policy. And you essentially share the risk with the insurance company. So if you need care and qualify, you would spend down the pool of money in the insurance policy that you put in and spend down the death benefit. So this would cover that high likelihood, high cost of $200,000 to $300,000 as an example. Then where the insurance company kicks in is an unlimited benefit for the tail risk of that longer term need. The good thing about this is if you do not need it for long-term care, don't use the full benefit, there's a death benefit to your heirs. For the most part, if you do purchase this, it's most economical to do it with a large upfront premium, which can be hard for folks. And then life insurance with a long-term care rider is somewhat similar. It may be more economical, but it doesn't protect that tail risk. It offers that pool of benefits of $200,000 to $300,000 that you spend down, but once that's gone, there's no more protection. So what do you do now? Figure out your own finances first, and then try to start having some of these conversations with your parents. Take the next right step, and just having a plan is more than most have done. So thinking about the different options is great. If you're an employer, try to give a little extra grace for somebody in this situation. If you're a spouse, pick up extra duties. If you're a sibling, make sure you do your fair share and don't, lean on one sibling completely. Here are a few books and resources that I like. And I'll come back to this and leave it up. But this Successful and Secure Retirement is a great, almost like a reference book that you can look at different chapters on different items. Women with Money is just sort of a good personal finance book. It would apply to men as well. And then these two are about kids, so making your kid a money genius, even if you're not, and that's more for raising younger kids, and then launching financial grown-ups. So with that, I'll jump into questions if there are any. This is my contact information, and then the QR code will go to a newsletter sign up if you want to sign up for that.
Awesome. Fantastic information. And let's go ahead and keep this up there just for a few moments, and then we'll click back to the books for people that are interested. If you do have a question, go ahead and drop them in the chat. It's always important to get those in there so we have time to get those answered from Mary Meadows. So I'm going to start from the top. And if you don't know, if you want to punt, that's fine with any of these. Do you know why FAFSA still considers students dependent if they don't live at home?
I do not.
And that's fair. That is
totally
fair. Any recommendations for increasing income or obtaining work that's in alignment with their skill set? This person's almost 40. They need to increase their earnings. Also, are you taking on new clients?
Okay. So I would say networking and can be a good way to get work, increase your earnings. If you're familiar with Momentum, the women's leadership organization in town, I had a conversation recently with them, and they are very mission driven about helping women increase their income and grow in their career. They have a fantastic mentoring program, and that will help build your network. They also have a program called Upward that you could apply for. let's see, researching on like Glassdoor and try to understand, where your skills might align compared to what is out there. And think about, now this is interesting. There's some research out there that shows that men will apply for a job that they feel 60% confident in their abilities on being able to do everything. Women typically will not apply unless they feel 100% confident. So, having conversations with folks about what are your skills, and how you can leverage that and make sure you're not shortchanging yourself.
Can you speak to Medicaid eligibility for parents who do not have assets or LTC insurance?
Okay, so Medicaid eligibility, like in general, Medicaid, you can get on Medicaid after you spend down all of your assets to like $2,000, which that is, not incredibly logical, but for long-term care, like skilled nursing, there is an allowance for being able to keep your house, or not, being forced to sell your house if you need care, and then being able to keep a portion of your, let's say, Social Security income. There are elder care planning lawyers that know a lot about this. And if there are, some assets, they may know how to better structure this. And then, what was I going to say on that? But there are, basically you would spend down your assets, and then Medicaid would kick in.
And keep those questions coming. We do have time for the Q&A. I'm going to skip back so people can take a look at the books that you recommend. And I'm going to go ahead and try to move us a little bit just so they can get the authors on the lower left. So is it possible for an older person to pay a family member to be their caregiver? Does that count as income for the family member?
So, yes, they can definitely pay. You could consult your accountant depending on how much it is, as far as what to count as income. But yes, you can certainly pay. There are some long-term care insurance policies that will pay out for a family caregiver as well. And I forgot to answer the question about taking on new clients. I do take on new clients, and I have some asset restrictions or minimums for kind of higher net worth folks, but then I also do hourly financial planning. And I don't have capacity this minute, but will later this summer. But you're welcome to reach out, schedule a meeting. I'll certainly always take a call and give you some initial thoughts. So you can reach me on the website.
And I do want to hit this question. It's a direct follow-up to the last one we had. Can you also be paid as a caregiver through the Medicaid waiver program?
I actually just found out, I have a client who does get paid through, this is for a parent with a child with a disability, so a grown, an adult son, and she is able to get paid. It's called the dependent care exclusion, so this is different from your parents. But yeah, she gets a nice payment through Medicaid for being the caregiver for her son. For as far as parents, I am not positive about that.
Any tips for cutting costs or saving money?
Yeah. So back to kind of cash flow, make sure that you know how much is going out every month and where it's going. Tapping into sort of your values and understanding what do you spend money on that gives you joy and what does not, can help give a little bit more of an emotional, I guess, connection to why you're cutting spending. I was working with some clients and we did a cash flow analysis, and they were definitely overspending, credit card debt, And when we looked at everything that they were spending money on and what the primary categories are, they had the realization that their spending did not align with their values. And so it made it a little bit more easy to cut back in some of those areas. And then just in general, be aware of subscriptions, online shopping. I make myself leave it in the cart for a day. And if I really want it, I can go back. But that kind of impulsive spending can definitely get you in trouble.
Just to toss it in the chat as well, that we do have a webinar that we recently did, 50 money management tips, that may be of interest as well. And this may be the last question unless we get any others that filter in. Do you have any tips for finding affordable LTC, like assisted living for an elderly parent?
Unfortunately, nothing super affordable. But I think United Way has a program that can help identify, calling around and their finance departments at the different facilities can help you sort of figure out. Elder care lawyers have kind of a pulse on what's out there. And then I didn't mention this earlier, but there are geriatric care managers is a profession that folks you can contract out or pay, an hourly fee to help you navigate Medicaid, pick the best facility. So there are some resources like that out there.
Off the top of your head, do you know where people can find that Medicare or Medicaid caregiver pay information? This person takes care of a 50-year-old sister with Down syndrome, and they're looking for more info.
If you can send me an email, I can connect you with somebody and send some resources. And then I'm also on the board of Down Syndrome Alabama. So if we can help any way that way, I'm glad to do it.
Awesome. And I think we have exhausted the Q&A. So
all right. Well, thanks, y'all. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
And before we highlight a few of our upcoming webinars, I'd like to invite Kimberly Kopic to share more about UAB planned giving. Kimberly.
Thanks, Greg. And thanks, Mary Meadows. That was wonderful. We appreciate the knowledge. A planned gift can help you make a powerful impact to the UAB program that means the most to you. Planned gifts offer creative, flexible strategies for your estate and charitable planning. These techniques make use of legal and tax strategies to best suit your unique situation and help you accomplish your personal and philanthropic goals. The UAB Office of Planned Giving is here to help you with your philanthropic goals. Reach out to me today to learn more about these types of gifts and to find out if one may be a good fit for you or for a loved one. Thank you.
And Kimberly, thank you so much. And as for those upcoming webinars, we're going to get there we go. On Wednesday, June 26th, you're invited back for Toxic Workplace Avengers Unite, how to recognize toxicity in the workplace and what to do about it. Dr. Alan Gorman returns as we explore why this is a problem and what we can do to combat it. Then on Thursday, July 11th, Dr. Dana Watson will be back for Finding Calm in the Chaos, 5 strategies for reducing stress. During this webinar, we'll learn strategies we can implement into our life to lessen stress. On Thursday, August 15th, get ready for fall tailgates and parties in general with tailgate cocktails. Mixologist Matt Smith from the Southern Kitchen and Bar in Uptown Cantina will join us as we learn how to craft 5 exciting fall cocktails. And on Tuesday, September 10th, come back for Are the New Weight Loss Medications Right for You?, where Dr. Holly Wyatt and Dr. Jim Hill will explore if you qualify for these medications and whether or not they'll be beneficial for you. You can register for these and more at alumni.uab.edu/events. Finally, we'd like to know what you thought about today's webinar, as well as what you'd like to see in the future. The QR code on your screen will take you to a short survey. Take a quick moment to share your thoughts with us. Once again, thanks so much for joining us today. And as always, go Blazers.